Welcome to this Wise Women Roundtable, and we're looking at January of 2024. How did we get to 2024 already? It's been like so fast. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they were saying they were wondering how fast 2023 would go by because the year seemed to go by faster and faster. And she said it was like, "Whoop." I was like, yeah, that's kind of how it feels. So here we are at the very end of 2023, looking into what's happening in January. And I always love the fact that as we end a year and begin a year, that something that's happening in the sky is that the star Sirius is directly overhead. And so it's at midnight and it's beaming its light and energy down to the earth. And so New Year's Eve to New Year's Day, we have this magic happening with the star. And I always think that um, Sirius is the star that we wish on, the wishing star, because it's, if you think of the poem, Starlight, Star Bright, for a star I see tonight, I wish I may, I wish I might have the wish I wish tonight. Sirius is the brightest star in our sky. So it's the first star people see as it's getting dark. And so it is the wishing star. So we can work with that energy, but it's not just on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. It's like leading up to it, and then definitely for a few days after the new year, and or anytime really you see Sirius, you can wish on that star. But just that it is kind of a remarkable thing that's happening as we begin the new year, and this only happens at certain times over long periods of time. So if we consider it takes Sirius and any star will move the seasonal sign that is over that star moves 1 degree every 72 years. So it's like 2,160 years in a seasonal sign. And Sirius is currently around 14 degrees Cancer. So it's going to be there for a long time. And so that's one of the reasons why we can experience the new year with Sirius overhead. So it's just something to know and to really work with as a possibility of how you are creating your new year intentions. I also just recently was reminded that a lot of times people have all these New Year's intentions and they're, really committed to that and think they're going to do that, and then they don't. And so this person was saying, pick one. Just pick one New Year intention and give yourself to that. And then other things can follow after that. But if you overwhelm yourself with too many intentions, it can be challenging to try to keep up with all of them. And in this world, in this crazy busy world, it's probably better just to pick one that is really lighting you up to work with that. The other thing that's happening on January 1st of 2024 is that Mercury is stationing direct at 22 degrees Sagittarius in alignment with a star that's the crown chakra of the constellation of Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer. And that star is the star of dream healing. So it's going to be a perfect time because if you think about any stationary planet, from the Earth's perspective, it looks like it's shifting direction. Of course, it's not. But the way the Earth's orbit's passing its orbit and all of that makes it look like it's stopping and shifting direction. And so when it stops, it's like a still point. The still point is where anything and everything is possible and can happen. And Mercury, of course, has to do with how we perceive our reality, how we are communicating, how we're creatively expressing, all of those things. So it's in a still point and a perfect time to be really tuning into what's true for you and what is your intent, one intent, if you choose that. If you want to choose more, that's fine. But really put the focus on the one that's the most alive and important to you. And when we're in the still point, anything can happen. So being with the star of dream healing, being in the still point, we're starting the new year with a real big energy. And then the other things that are happening that really stood out to me are we've got Chiron square the sun, or sun square Chiron. Venus and Mars are going into Capricorn. They're going to square Chiron. Chiron's in Aries. And there was one other thing that I was thinking. Um, oh, yeah, and Pluto's going to conjunct the sun for the last time in over 200 years in Capricorn. So Chiron and Pluto are underworld planets, meaning that it's when we go into that deep dive into the inner parts of ourself, we can face our fears and our shadow and our all the things that maybe we're afraid of, and transmute and transform them so they're no longer defining our choices. And that's the power of these underworld planets. And they're so present through the month of January as we go towards the cross quarter in February. So one of the Chiron Sun conjunction is happening on January 6th, and that's the day of the Magi. So it's in the from the Christian perspective, when the Magi show up to honor the Christ child, the birth of the Christ child, it's the way that story is told. But what I like about the word Magi is it is within the word magic. So there's powerful magic happening for us this coming month in January of 2024. And uh, we have an opportunity to see the things that are in the way of us really truly living who we are meant to be. What are the fears? What are the doubts? What are the uncertainties? What are the insecurities? What are the things that are the beliefs that are limiting beliefs that hold us back? And hopefully then have the opportunity to transmute and transform them. And the other thing is, Mars goes into Capricorn on January 4th, and then Venus on Mercury back into Capricorn on January 13th, and Venus on January 23rd. So there's all this Capricorn energy that's being also activated. And then, of course, these planets will be squaring Mercury, Chiron during this time, during this month. So also, Mars is outside the boundaries of the sun. It's out of bounds. So it's in a wild card place. It's in a place where anything and everything is possible. Again, it seems like these themes keep coming up in all the different planetary alignments. On January 27th, Uranus, the planet that is the most unpredictable and wild, as well, is also stationing direct. So it'll be in a still point place as on January 27th, meaning all the planets will start moving forward or will be moving forward from January 27th to April 1st for 64 days. So there's no retrogrades that are going to maybe slow anything down or whatever. The challenge can be we can go too fast and we don't necessarily take the time to plan as carefully when that's happening. But it's also, there's no excuses. There's no excuses for not getting the things done that we want to get done, or just being in the way we want to be is another possibility. So those are the highlights of this coming month as we enter a new year with new possibilities and powerful dreaming energy. And I will just mention quickly that we did talk about in our last video how we're working with the dragon energy. And by February, we will enter the year of the dragon from the Chinese perspective. So, so we can still call on that energy. And if you didn't see that video, we'll put it in the show notes and you can go back and get more insight about how to work with that energy. So with that, I'm going to pass this along to my beloved sister, Nalini.
Well, thank you for that. I'm not sure we have to call in the dragon, excuse me, energies. They're definitely here. And what's starting up for 2024 are just these wild, unpredictable, birthed out of chaos rivulets and currents and waves of light. And excuse me, they're not stopping. These are not the kind that ebb and flow. These are the kind that just keep going. Sorry about this. And so one of the images that I got for this time, because we've just been through a very powerful solstice that basically blew away. I mean, part of all the Capricornian energy is just blowing away structure and anything that will no longer serve, that will not support us, that will not just simply work in the new energies. It's not a good or bad kind of thing. It's just, this won't work anymore. So it's being dissolved. And so there are a lot of parts of us that are currently in free fall. And some of us really like that. And others of us, or other parts of us, it's very disconcerting. There's the little voices inside saying, where do I ground? Where do I ground? Well, on your light, on the stellar heart of Gaia, on your own essence. But that's not what we were taught. And there's so much with that dissolution, and then with the full moon, with this drawing in of all of the infusions that happened through 2023 of new light, higher frequencies, higher vibration, starting to draw that into this new platform. I mean, Gaia has a new operating system. And whenever that happens, on your computer, if you upgrade, there are always changes. There are always, oh, they changed this, they made this different. How do I use this? Well, we're in that on the planet right now. And so we are literally learning how to walk a new way. And we're doing it through immersion. And there don't have to be these huge events that we learn from anymore. The event-driven school of learning is, by and large, for those who are conscious, over, and can be. We can simply look at something in consciousness that's approaching and say, okay, well, the light is intelligence. It will carry me through in the most optimal way if I let it. And those are those flows of motion, those electromagnetic currents that are in the ley lines on the planet that are called, in some cultures, dragon lines, and that we can literally ride through this time. The energies of 2024 are so accelerated. We think that 2023 was fast. I also, just having gone through this last full moon and sort of clasping the 13 jewels of transformation into its circuit, that felt like lifetimes. Felt like lifetimes were passed through in this last year. Well, this coming year, it could be ages, it could be cycles. We don't know. We're integrating so much. And I think that it's so important. The Arcturians are big on integration. And it's always, well, all right, what part of this needs integrating, recognizing, accepting, integrating, and what parts can just be left behind as the bits on the salad bar that you don't like. And there's so much of that going on right now. And what really does support, what will support going forward, a lot of it will not be what has supported us thus far. And there's a little bit of grief in that going on, or maybe a lot bit of grief going on about that. And we might not know where it's coming from. Where's that grief coming from? Well, it's the stuff that's essentially dying that we can mourn, we can integrate the good bits, and then allow ourselves to be moved, to be impulsed with Source at the helm. And that, to me, is dragon riding. It's just letting the flow take you. It's not going with the flow. That's way too passive. It's just letting that current move us in the moment as the moment. And there's just so much that we need to take care of ourselves, and we need to integrate, and we need to allow ourselves to be supported through that and let that loving energy carry us. So with that thought, I would like to pass this on to another beloved sister, Sarah.
Thank you, Melanie and Kaylin. So interesting that you have both reminded me of the speed of 2024. I had heard that. I guess I didn't really know what it meant, but maybe none of us really know what that means either. But it helps me make sense of what I would like to share today, and which is essentially something that I have been integrating myself in the last few days. And it touched me so deeply that I felt that it would be really useful to speak about this. So, Kaylin, you spoke about the new moon and new moon
the new year intentions and all the collective going into that. And of course, we're going to get drawn maybe a little bit, maybe not so much, but there's a part of us that kind of gets a little bit pulled into it. Just because it's how we've always, the operating manual of the past was that. What came up for me hugely as I started making a flower essence combination for myself to support myself as we go through this portal. And each of the essences that came forward for me was so, well, of course they were totally, on point. Of course they were. But it was just like, so the message, it was as if all of the flowers and crystals that came forward for me all said the same thing, but in slightly different ways. Some said them in pink ways, some said them in green ways, some said them in blue ways or whatever. Some said them in crystal ways, others flower ways. But it was just like, oh my goodness, I need to listen. And what I was being told, or what was being reminded, was nothing that none of us don't know, is that, and this is my nature, is to get pulled forward. I have a very kind of expansive nature, so its nature is to kind of do this all the time. And what I can often forget to do is to come back. I'll be in continual opening mode. And I think it's why nature and the moon have been so helpful for me, because they've taught me that there is a cycle, which again we all know, but I didn't really have a system to follow. And it was like, oh, that's how you do it. You just you come back and then you go back out like the sea. I could feel the tides going back in and out. So really what I wanted to share, I think, and I think this is potentially because of the speed of 2024, is that this is an extraordinary chance right now to integrate. So often we rush into the new without having closed the old. So, and nature, and particularly essences, because it's what I know about, but nature in all her forms, when we listen to her, helps us to return back to the start before we go back out again. So I've got a couple of nature beings. The first one, the light that I've got in front of me here, is maybe distracting a little bit. This is a malachite. Beautiful malachite stones, one of my favorite stones. Malachite really wanted to say, or to remind us of the importance of coming home before we go back out again. If we go out on all-night parties, it's good to actually come back home and go to bed for a few hours and rest and ground before you go back out again. So it's kind of like, let's ground physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, so that when we do go back out again, in whenever that is for us, because when we work with nature, we're kind of working in a very quantum field, I think, because there are no timelines. They don't really do days. What they do, there's cycles. It's not like, oh, this, it's going to take 4 weeks or 6 weeks. It's like it'll take the time that it takes. So we can kind of forget the time part a little bit when we allow ourselves to go into that. But it's a real reminder to come back home, to ground, integrate, process first, so that when we do start growing again, we're growing from a place of coherence and order rather than chaos, which is kind of my default. I mean, I'm kind of making it sound like completely chaotic in my world. It used to be, but hopefully you can understand what I'm saying, is that the more that we can come home and rest and process and integrate. And as you were saying, I think, Nalini, let go, be discerning, let the things drop away that we don't need. It can be really helpful. The other nature being that wanted to come forward is a very different being. This is an Australian flower. I don't know if it grows in other parts of the world. I'm sure it does, but this is Dog Rose of the Wild Forces. So it's got quite a dramatic name. I know it as part of the Australian bush essences. You can't really see that there, but you can find out more information about it online. Beautiful magenta and green, the two modalities, the two colors of the heart. So Dog Rose of the Wild Forces was made. So I'm repeating on some level here what Ian White, who made the essence, has shared, was made in a part of Australia right next to a very steep waterfall. So this flower kind of hangs over, rushing, like you wouldn't want to fall off this waterfall kind of place. And so it grows in that very fast moving, quite, exciting, for want of a better word, energy. And one thing I love about the Australian bush essences is that so many people have taken them. I mean, like thousands of people have taken them, and Ian gets loads of testimonials, is that all the different kinds of emotional experiences they help with. So with Dog Rose of the Wild Forces, it's very much about helping to heal severe stress, PTSD, all of those kinds of things. And so in terms of us integrating as we go into 2024, for many, many, many people, especially with the build-up of the last few years, there's been, our nervous systems have been very heightened. Sometimes we don't understand why it's like that. And when the kind of modern human default of that would be to try and subdue it or stop it, or we'd go and distract ourselves in whatever way we do that best. And so there's a build up inside, and all of a sudden it might start to express itself a little bit like that waterfall and the flowers. And so Dog Rose of the Wild Forces, when it came out for me, I was quite surprised, because I thought I wouldn't really put myself in severe stress type of, I wouldn't put my hand up to this is how I feel. But actually, when I thought about it, and I thought, yeah, my year has been a bit like that. And yes, I can put myself in that camp. So Dog Rose, what it can do, if you resonate with that, and particularly if you love this flower, whether or not you really understand the message, it can bring us back into that balanced place. And the other thing that Ian shares about it, which I thought was really resonated for me, and I think for some people here it might as well, is that when healers, spiritual people like us, basically, when we start to move into these new energies, our consciousness can expand really quickly. And when it does that, if we don't understand, it can feel as if we're going crazy. And Ian has had loads of, another Ian Kalin, and has had loads and loads of testimonials from people who aren't necessarily in severe stress or PTSD, but who have been learning and expanding in the more spiritual realms. And they've come across places in themselves where they've kind of gone, I'm not getting the information that everybody else is getting. Maybe, they start to doubt their own sanity because what they're getting is different. So taking this, even on a short term, can really, really help bring back feelings of balance and sanity. So really, really interesting. So I hope those have been helpful to people listening, and just a reminder to use this time to ground, integrate, and process. Or maybe continually do that as 2024 starts to roll out, just a reminder to build in those times of how can I come back home. So on that note, to Elizabeth. Thank you, Elizabeth, for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you, Sarah. I love what you were talking about, the integration piece. And as you were speaking, I could kind of tap in right now to the cellular body and watching the way that our bodies integrate physically. And with all the new information that's coming through, because we're in such a new place in space. And just like Nalini's saying, these eddies and flows that are not going to stop, but rather continue on their speed and refinement, towards more zero points where like solstice, where we go in and kind of go into a black hole reset of structure to get to the heart of formlessness. And then the body has to try to make sure that she can integrate that. And of course, I think as modern people, we tend to do that with our mind first. And when we are not mentally understanding what we're integrating, then we tend to beat ourselves up. And I want to acknowledge that the perhaps the very ancient and better way of integrating and learning and getting that cellular integration so that your mind can catch up later is doing it from the heart space. And so in the past couple of days, there's been some interesting new information about the heart. And first off, the heart is a single muscle that is actually wrapped in a vortex spiral. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we have the idea that we've been sharing all these years that the heart is a pump for our blood. And we find out now that it's not. The heart is a vortex machine that's being run by structured water, which is a fourth state of water in your body. And so you naturally integrate all positive and negative aspects of our reality, not positive and negative in like good and evil terms. Because when you drop all those structures about what you think is going on, what the relationships are, you'll eventually drop your idea of good and evil too, and get down to the heart of the matter, which is positive and negative energetics, or being able to have an experience, go in, and then go to the still point, the 0 point, what Nalini was saying, grounding in that essence, grounding in the I am, your existence, grounding in that, and then coming back out and then playing it out in a perceptive based way now, which is so wonderful. What a beautiful change for us to be able to work in. But then, of course, the body has to make it work. And we're learning how to walk. All of us are on the edge. No one knows where we are in this place. We've never been here before. This galaxy's never been in this place in space before. And we are coming into something, we're on the edge of it, that is so new and so unique. It's very exciting, but our bodies also have never been there before. The earth has to have a new operating system to be able to even continue to move through space and time in this place that we're in. So being able to let the heart do that work for you, because the heart is the seat of your I am presence. It's the seat of your integration. She's the one who can feel and perceive all of the different eddying and not have any judgment about it, not have any expectations or attachments to outcome, because we really don't know what's going to happen. So how could you be attached to it? But then, of course, I think the key is resistance. And if you resist, then it's going to be like trying to cling on to the edge of a river as it's falling apart in your hand and it's moving faster. Now, some people, they're willing to go through that free fall. That some of us enjoy that. That's true. And the adrenaline of consciousness and the new consciousness that's available. And then others, it's new. So each of us are going to have a really big piece right now that's starting to dissolve in our lives. And it might be relationships where, we can't have the same labels for relationships anymore. There's just new ways to do things. And if you are willing to open up to that, including a relationship with your body that's different too, then you're going to be able to really enjoy this time and all these changes. And I'm of the camp that life is too short not to have some fun with all the new consciousness. It also reveals shadow. And I'm so glad that the underworld gets to be revealed, Because eventually, as Kaylin was talking about, keep up with processing here. If you're doing upkeep, then the shadow work ends up being fun, because then you can unleash all that consciousness that was under pressure and do the next step of expanding again. And then coming back inward, like Sarah's saying, to integrate and find that 0 point, the I am, bring it in, let the body fully experience it and integrate it, and then going back out to play in this beautiful new realm. And certainly all the dimensions being wide open. This is just going to continue to flow. It's many gates of reality have opened up. And so vortices and eddies and cool portals and all kinds of things are opening up, dreams, skills, superpowers, perhaps, that have been dormant in all of us. And then the last thing I see as January moves forward into that holiness of the Magi brought gifts to Christ, and they were 3 very special gifts. And these actually speak to our bodies very deeply. The gold, the frankincense, and the myrrh. Those are actually medicines of longevity. They weren't handed to little baby Jesus as some money and some nice incense. Those 3 compounds, when consumed in a very specific way, monatomic gold and the essential oils of frankincense and myrrh, actually act as regenerative to the body, but also your DNA. They lengthen your telomeres. They're powerful painkillers. They're really special gifts of longevity. And I think that they're also gifts of integration. And so we might consider looking at that more closely for ourselves. If that resonates with you, that's what was coming up about the Magi and the magic of how the human body works in integration with all the material around it. And certainly the human body having a special relationship with gold, because it turns out that your body makes monatomic gold and it uses it. So the heart space is literally creating and making monatomic gold, and it's moving through your body. You are a crystalline creature as much as you are a liquid one. So that means that we are in our nature meant to go with the flow, but also we are magic. And that's I think the heart of the matter coming into this time of the dragon, which for some people it's kind of scary because dragons are really intense. And this is a very interesting 8-year numerology, which is karma. What goes around comes around. But it's also the vortices of the heart, the double vortex of the field. And as above, so below is really one of the themes too that I see for our year coming up. So I hope that all this is useful and helpful to you. And thank you again, ladies, for our special time together as usual.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, that's all. You're also brilliant. I love you. And I know this is going to be helpful for everyone. And we will have information in the show notes, so be sure to check that out. And we'll look forward to connecting with you as we move into 2024 and beyond. So bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.